I'm talking about the people of search, specifically advanced audience targeting, demographic targeting on and off the Google SERP. And it's really an interesting topic to me. It's one of my favorite things to talk about in all of marketing in general. But it's not my favorite thing to talk about. Like most marketers, my absolute favorite thing to talk about is, of course, myself. So I appreciate the introduction there. Of course, my name is Mark Irvine. I'm a senior data scientist at WordStream. And so effectively, what a senior data scientist does, I spend a lot of time. I get to look into a lot of client accounts while I'm here. WordStream happens to have over 22,000 individual ad accounts across Google AdWords, across Bing Ads, across Facebook. And with that, of course, every single client is every day logging into our software, performing a 20-minute work week. They're testing a lot of things. They're trying out new ads, they're trying out new extensions, they're trying out different types of targeting, reaching different audiences online. They're able to go in, they're able to see the results of their own tests, but as a data scientist, I get to take a little step back from that. I get to look at specifically what kinds of tests people are performing, and ultimately, did that test go well, did it not go well, and then at the aggregate level across 22,000 accounts, what kinds of tests generally go well? What makes someone generally successful in paid search versus what generally is a poor test? And so I've been able to do a lot over the years while I've been at WordStream. I, of course, spoken at a number of events over the past couple of years. I've done a number of webinars. This is my first digital Olympus, which I'm excited about. But all that's accumulated into me being voted the 5th most influential paid search expert of 2017. So very, very humbled, very thrilled, and doing a lot of stuff in paid search. But recently, I did something that I had never done before. I did something that I don't ever intend to do again. But it was exciting, it was thrilling, it was life-changing. And that's that I recently got married. And it was, honestly, it was a beautiful day. It was something that does not happen accidentally, of course. I'm only happy, only thrilled to talk about that experience. And if you were in the WordStream office, I'm sure you've heard me talk about it more than a couple of times in the last couple of months. But it was, of course, a very, very important part of my life. But morning of, as I'm getting ready, as I'm getting dressed, as guests are coming in and walk down the altar and walk up to my soon-to-be husband at the time, I had the thought that I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this today had thought, and that's, of course, that audience targeting is a whole lot like a relationship. Because, of course, I kid with that, but we don't run into this issue in beginning a relationship that you can't find anyone. Instead, you're looking to find someone very, very special. Very similarly, particularly if you're doing any kind of online advertising, I've never run into a client that is spending money online and isn't able to find people online to get to their site. But it's not so much about quantity, it's about quality. It's not difficult to find someone to get to your site, but finding the perfect someone or finding the ideal match for your ads or for your website, well, that's a lot more hard. So if you guys don't mind, and I guess you don't have a whole lot of choice in it at this point, I would like to kind of engage with this metaphor a little bit for the next 20 minutes or so as I begin to talk about audience targeting. And so the very first thing you have to do when you begin a relationship or when you begin targeting people online is, of course, you have to find someone special. You have to find the person that you want to spend this time with, that you want to get to your site. When I started dating Bobby back about 10 years, or when I first met Bobby about 10 years ago, I didn't necessarily know what this was going to be, but it was definitely an interesting experience. But even if I go a little bit further, finding your ideal match, it's not always what you think it is, and it's not always the first thing that comes into your mind. So if I go back to my awkward teenage years when I started dating, if I start talking about who my middle school crush was, well, that's none other than the one and only Miss Britney Spears. Like, this was early 2000s, so excuse me for a little bit, but that's who I grew up having as my middle school crush. When you compare that to my partner, who I'm spending the rest of my life with, you know, a couple of things should immediately stand out. And that's, of course, hey, I like blondes, definitely right on that point. But as you kind of begin to dissect into this a little bit and a little bit more, a couple of important things might stick out to those of you who are paying close attention. And so this is a lesson that a very awkward teenage me had to learn the hard way. And that's we don't always know what we're looking for right away. But that's not just a lesson that a very awkward teenage Mark had to cope with. Brands often hit this struggle right away, where their intuition or the loudest executive in the room might have an idea who their target audience is and ultimately end up being wrong. I encourage you to rethink who your key audiences might be. A recent Think with Google study revealed that 40% of all baby product purchasers live in households without children. And so that's a very easy assumption that if you're marketing this baby product, that you would assume that you're marketing this to a new parent. But that's not even half of the full story. If you were only to target those parents, you'd only be getting half of your potential purchases. Now that's obviously an important example if you live in, if you're trying to sell baby products. But even in something in the world of shampoo, I recently had a client, you think of a shampoo commercial, and I guarantee you that just about every shampoo commercial you'll see today, they all feature that exact same woman washing her hair, having the greatest shower of her life, the greatest shampoo of her life. But instead, what I want you to do is I want you to rethink your key audiences and use data to validate these kinds of decisions. Google Analytics is a great place to turn to because we could dive into Google Analytics, and under the Audiences tab, we can begin to play around with different ages or different genders of people who are on our sites. And this shampoo company, yes, they were 100% correct that, well, most of the people on their site are female. Most of the people who see their ads are female. Here, men make up about 7% of their total audience. So that kind of wisdom, yep, your intuition might guide you towards where most people are, but don't use it to validate who your best people are. When we actually look at the conversion rate of these audiences, we actually see the fact that whereas women converted at just under 3%, men converted at 4.55%. That this men who arrived at their site were actually a very quality audience, that they converted over 50% more of the time than women did. And not only were they more likely to convert on their site, but when we actually look at what revenue looks like, that although men made up fewer visits to their site, and they may have made up fewer purchases to their site, at the end of the day, when men made a purchase, they also spent 4 times as much per transaction as their female counterparts. So it would be very easy to just walk on, assume the fact that women are going to be the ones who are purchasing this. But lo and behold, men is a very important audience, making up about 1/3 of this company's revenue. If they exclusively targeted women, they wouldn't reach that 1/3 of their revenue. Now, demographic targeting is available across all of our major social networks, but it's also available on the SERP itself through Bing and through AdWords in the demographics tab. And using this, we can actually begin not just to target our ads, but we can actually begin to personalize our ads for our audience here. So recently ran this special Valentine's Day gift ad for one of my clients. Special Valentine's Day gift, 100% smile guaranteed. Spend $100 and get a free box of chocolate sweet up his or her day. It's not a bad ad, but that his or her day almost rings intentionally impersonal. So what we did is I encouraged this client to set up a split test. We ran that ad against 2 variants of itself. And one ad we showed exclusively to men, the other showed exclusively women, and it just changed a single word between the 2. Men found an ad that read, find the perfect gift for her, spend $100 and get a free box of chocolate sweet per day. and we served the exact same ad to woman, but just changed out that opposite gender pronoun. Woman saw an ad that read, "Find the perfect gift for him," sweeten up his stay. And so that original ad, it again performed fairly well, a click-through rate of 7.3%, a conversion rate of 1.8%. But that small variant, serving different ads to men and women with just slightly different language, we actually saw that men clicked on that "Find the perfect gift for her" ad close to 12% of the time, and women clicked on the "Find the perfect gift for him" ad 9.25% of the time. So that one small variant in language improved the click-through rate by 60 and 30% respectively for these audiences, but in both cases, more than doubled the conversion rate. And so just by changing out a single word, but thinking a little bit more about the audience, we're able to more than double the conversion rate here. And we did that without touching the landing page, without touching the offer, without offering free shipping, without offering anything different, just changing a single word to speak more directly to the audience who's searching. Next part of a relationship is, of course, as things begin to get a little bit more serious, as you've identified this particular person, well, knowing when to ask that question becomes increasingly important. It took me a while. It took me, like I said, I met Bobby 10 years ago, and I didn't propose until about 2 years ago. But so knowing when to ask is actually a bigger challenge and might take a little bit longer than you originally think. Obviously, this is very dependent. When you ask your customers to convert, it's going to be very different depending on which industry you are in. If you're a plumber and I need someone to come over and fix my plumbing immediately, well, that's very time sensitive. I don't have a whole lot of time to search around for that kind of need. But a lot of e-commerce, travel, auto, legal, real estate, it's very likely that those search cycles might be longer than you might think they are. And so we can use the Google Analytics time lag report to determine how long users wait before they buy. This, again, is in Google Analytics along your left-hand rail under time lag. And this will give you an idea of how long it is after people first arrive at your site before they ultimately make a purchase on your site. So you'll discover something that looks like this. You'll discover that a lot of people will, in fact, make that purchase right away. But this is, again, for shampoo. And here we see the fact that about 2/3 of people make that purchase right away, but several people, 15% of people, take more than 2 weeks to purchase that bottle of shampoo. People are still purchasing that 30, 60, 90 days after first viewing it online. So you'll be surprised when you look at this report how long it might take people to reach your site and make that decision to purchase. You want to make sure that you're reaching these audiences to capture at least 95% of these types of conversions along the way. Very similarly, the path length, you'll be discovered how many times they'll visit your site. You'll see that many people might come to your site, purchase right away, but more than half of people aren't going to purchase right away. They'll need to pull that secondary search. They'll look for promo codes. They'll look for what your competitors are priced at. That just because they're interested in you doesn't mean that they're exclusively interested in you, as tough as that might be to take. The good news here is you'll very often see that those people who spend more money are willing to look around a little bit more along the way. And so as you see people making multiple steps before purchase, that's where remarketing really comes into play. The fact that someone is going to come to your site, not take that action you necessarily need them to take, but how do you remain in front of them? And remarketing is the perfect solution for that. A lot of people, of course, love remarketing just for the fact that it gets people to your site, but we actually see that remarketing, even if people aren't clicking on that remarketing ad itself, that just by showing a user an ad multiple times, we actually increase their likelihood for conversion. So just by showing a user an ad a second time, we increase the likelihood of their conversion by 60%. But being persistent, continuing to be persistent and showing an ad to a user 4, 5, or 6 times, showing an ad to a user 6 times increases their likelihood of conversion by more than 100%, makes them twice as likely to ultimately come back to your site and convert. So even if people aren't necessarily engaging with your remarketing ads, they still provide value along the way. And knowing that actions speak louder than keywords, we know that in life, past actions are the best indicator of future actions. We can also use remarketing on the search network to target, exclude, or bid differently based off of what people have done on your site in the past. So if I were trying to serve someone who was searching to visit me and was looking for Boston hotels, I could show that ad to everyone who's ever searched for Boston hotels. But knowing whether or not they've been to my site in the past or previously booked a room with one of my hotels gives me a lot of indication of whether or not they're very genuinely interested in my particular hotel. And using that information, I can choose to bid differently or target people differently. We see that returning visitors are often appreciably more likely, about twice as likely to click on your ad, regardless of the ad network itself. But more engaged users, shopping cart banners, past buyers are about 5 times as likely to ultimately click on your ad across any network. So that's really great to get in front of these people, but we see the fact that these more valuable users, again, returning users, are about 25% more likely to convert when they return. But people who are closer down the funnel, past buyers, are about, again, 5 times more likely to convert again. So just by thinking about how people have engaged with you in the past is often enough to be successful in getting them back and getting them to convert on your site. You can also reuse your email marketing lists within a customer match audience. So if you have email or their phone information or their address information, if you have their personal identifying information, you can upload that right into Google itself and reach about half of the same people using customer match. And we actually see that customer match, people who trust you with their cell phone information, their email information, we actually see that those people who have trust in your brand have the highest conversion rate when they come back to your site as well. Oftentimes averaging closer to 15 or 16% conversion rate, which is phenomenal. And so finally, of course, the last step that I took is I got married, which is exciting. And one of the most exciting things about it for me is we're both very strong people. We've both got great strengths to us. But at the end of the day, we're far stronger together than we are necessarily apart. That there are things that I rely on him to do that I certainly couldn't do for myself, and vice versa. And you'd want to continue that pattern with your campaigns by marrying your campaigns together. Too often when we think about all of our advertising networks, we think of them as very separate numbers, but we don't really stop and think about the fact that these 270 million people on Facebook are a lot of the same 246 million in Google, and that a lot of that 241 million on Bing are also on Google, and that all of the exposure of our campaigns, these are all reaching effectively the same audiences, just in different ways. So given the fact that your users are likely across multiple networks, you should also look at how your ads can play together across multiple networks. We see the fact that advertising on Google, you'll attract people who are currently searching for you on Google. But just by beginning to expose yourself to another network, advertising across both Bing and Google gets you, of course, the Bing audience as well, but it also encourages 26% more people to search for you on Google. When you begin a display campaign, you see similar kinds of growth. You see 31% of people will see your display ad and then also search for you later. And Facebook is a particularly powerful tool here as well, that Facebook has a wide audience. People who see your Facebook audience, see your Facebook ad, are 34% more likely to ultimately search for you on Google afterwards. And the best part about thinking about targeting cross-network is we really only have a couple of demographic targeting options on the search network. But when we look on the display side, we open up a lot more in terms of interest and affinities and in-market audiences. But social has so many more different ways in which we can possibly cater our audience a little bit based off of their job or their education or their relationship status or their life events. So knowing all of this, if you had a very specific audience that you're trying to reach, it is not necessarily this game of trying to reach them on search or social, that a winning combination is trying to reach them on both. And you can use their social targeting within your search campaigns like this. So I have this one client that they offer specialty school travel, and they're looking to get in front of decision makers like school teachers. That's not a target audience that you can easily reach on Google directly, but it's very easy to reach that audience on Facebook. So you can create a Facebook campaign, launch that Facebook campaign targeting that audience, and get a lot of people to your site. Get all these teachers to your site. Came to 63 cents per click. So 63 cents, it was very easy to get thousands and thousands of people to the site for under a couple $100. And from that audience, we were able to create this specific remarketing audience within Google Analytics of people who are coming to our site via that particular Facebook campaign. Once we have that audience in Google Analytics, well, now we can begin to target them on Google directly. So now when people are searching for school trips abroad, I'm able to reach these teachers directly themselves, knowing the fact that they came through that Facebook campaign that was only exposed to teachers. So now I know something about that audience who's searching here. And so now I'm able to serve them this specific ad. And I'm also able to cater the language slightly differently to this group of teachers, knowing the fact that value props catered towards them might be a little bit differently than those catered towards parents. So I know I just spoke very quickly and I went through a lot. I just want to quickly recap what I said. You want to make sure that you're targeting your ads and your keywords to different demographics. And don't rely on your instincts here. You could easily be wrong in terms of who you think your customers are. Trust data, particularly from Google Analytics, to see which demographics are going to be best for your campaign. Next, use your remarketing audience to improve your campaign targeting. You'll see that more engaged users on your site are more likely to later convert. And finally, all of your campaign targeting should work best together. You can leverage the same kinds of targeting that you have in your social or your display campaigns within your search campaigns by integrating them through Google Analytics. And with that, it's been a pleasure to speak to you today. My name is Mark Irvine from WordStream.